And welcome to the latest edition of Cruising with the Coaches, a conversation with Julie and Lee. I'm one of your co-hosts, Lee, other co-host. Wait. Yes, I got it right. But
Yes, you did.
Julie, how are things going?
Good. How about you?
You know I always got something. Always got
Uh-huh.
something. No,
Yeah.
I promise. So we're gonna start a little
I wasn't
health.
being negative. Just like,
Oh
okay.
no! Oh no! We're gonna start a little health corner, right? Little health tips. So I got a question for you because I think you are a person who's used a brush or a comb at some point. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think women kind of know this health tip. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm kind of speaking to the men, kind of speaking to the men. And clearly, like, I don't have hair for a brush or a comb, so it's not about the hair, right? Uh,
Hmm.
on a serious note, like, I have psoriasis, and I thought at some point that my psoriasis was flaring up all over my face. And literally, I looked in the mirror, my skin was on fire, right? I could see it under my beard. That's how bad it was. So now back to the health tip. So I'm thinking, okay, I started using new beard balm or whatever. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm allergic to it. Whatever it is, it's breaking me out, which is kind of true. I am allergic to like tea tree oil, which is crazy, right? Shouldn't be. But I never thought to clean the brush. So I brush my beard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, clean the brush. So on top of like my skin was breaking out a little bit under the beard,
Sure.
but if you keep brushing it with the dirty beard, you're just reinfecting everything that's open, right?
You should clean it monthly. Do you not do that?
Yes, you should. You should.
Oh, okay. So
And
you don't. You didn't.
I didn't. Yeah.
Do now. Okay.
Ding 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 ding.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
but now you see why I say that I'm pretty sure women know that, right? Because
Okay.
most women have a
Well, I
brush
would
or a
have thought you
comb.
would have known that with your condition. Like I would have just
One
assumed
one would
after.
think, right?
Yeah.
We
Okay.
Well, see, but when I had enough hair to brush, I did, right?
Okay.
So for anyone watching and listening, it's been relatively new to have a full beard, right? I mean, okay, last 5, 10 years. I couldn't grow a beard until I was like 40, right? So all right, there's that. And even then, it was like, okay, I don't really need to brush it because it's not whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, ran into that, and I was like, oh. So
But
PSA.
a brush is a brush, no matter how much hair you have.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. So public service announcement for the fellas who have beards who may not be thinking about this. Um, Clean the brush
Yes.
at least monthly, at least, at least.
Yes.
And so yeah, gave it a good cleaning because I have a brush in my backpack too because I'm always on the go, right? I was like, yeah, I'm gonna clean that one too because
Because
yeah,
it sits longer and you don't, yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So again, just we're gonna start some health tips. Keep people on their toes. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I one would think, and so unfortunately, like I am allergic to tea tree oil, and I think some of the new beard balm I was using does have tea tree oil in it,
Okay.
so I can't use it. But I wasn't helping myself.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Right. So which means
Um,
you need to clean it even better because it still had it in it. So
Yeah. So I cleaned it all out, and I'm using my old oils again, all that good stuff. So
good.
anyhow, I'm sure people are like, yeah, no, Lee, clean the brush. What were you thinking? But moving on. Excuse me. So topic for today, I think is a good one, right? Make sure I get the right slides in here. Um, this is a big deal, and I think so. Why raising your partner can lead to burnout, right? Before we get into it fully, I think this may have happened during COVID, right? I don't think
Mhm.
people may have realized certain things, and COVID shined a light on a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Whether you wanted to shine it on it or not, like it was shining in the dark corners. It did that. So I think this is a good thing to bring up and let people know. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, um, as this is from Psychology Today, but yeah, as you know, relationships start innocently enough, and you meet somebody, however you meet them, from app, a mutual friend, go on a few dates, and you got the butterflies in your stomach, and it's all good, and that person is special. Excuse me. And then, at least you think they are, right? Months fly by, you're convinced that they're your soulmate, and you're flying on cloud nine. Got enough energy to power through. I'm in love. At least you think you are. And you're rereading all the old messages and scrolling through your Instagram feed, riding high, just thinking this is your person, right? And no one can tell you that because now you've told your family and your friends, and then you wake up one morning and you realize that your soulmate, your one and only, your forever and ever love, is doing things that seem illogical and, if you're honest, kind of stupid. So, before we go on, sorry, any comments on what we've stated so far?
And I want to be clear. This is beyond silly things. Like we're not talking like
Right.
I know like in our household, I can recall, oh my gosh, my household, we kept the ketchup in the cabinet. His household, they kept it in the refrigerator. So that was
Is
like
that a
one of those
deal
things where it was just like,
breaker?
okay, yeah,
Right,
it was just
right.
kind of like, that's not something I got to teach you. That's just something we got to do it one way or the other, or,
Right, but it's not gonna make you
yeah,
question your
exactly.
relationship.
It's not like, oh my God, how are you raised? What the hell is wrong with you? Kind of, it's not that kind of thing.
It's
This
it's
is like some
it's not the
serious,
toilet paper on the top or the bottom because we've
exactly.
that is a deal breaker. That's
It's like,
if
oh
you're
my God,
wondering,
who
folks.
raised you? What the hell?
Yeah, go back to our past episode, folks. You'll catch that one. You'll catch that one.
These are not those type of things. So I just want to be
Right.
clear.
That's
It's not that type of stuff.
good point. Good point. But it could feel like the simple
Exactly.
things, become big things, right?
Exactly.
Well, key thing is, where do you keep the hot sauce?
In my purse. So that's irrelevant.
I mean, fair. So that done deal. Mic drop.
Oh, too funny.
Yeah, wasn't ready for that one. All right, cool. Well, going back to the relationships and in raising your partner, you are the person, right, who's always been like the planner, the organizer, being proactive about things. Um, and you see their, and I'm using air quotes here, terrible habits playing out, and you worry about the relationship going the distance. Excuse me. So, having always been told that you are generous, kind hearted, and you're a compassionate person, you now take on this mission that you are going to make your partner the better version of themselves. You are going to coach them into perfection. I got to come out on camera here real quick, and that's just not going to work, right?
Right.
I think we've talked enough on other episodes. You can't change somebody, right? But I'm getting ahead. I'm getting ahead. So, all right. Moving on. Moving on. Soon enough, most of your sentences begin with "Don't forget to," or "Remember that you need to." Um, but you feel like your partner's still doing the same annoying thing. Now you're annoyed, you're angry, you're frustrated because you don't think they appreciate how you're trying to help them. Sorry, I'm trying not to laugh. um, yeah. So after all, isn't that what love is about? Right? Coaching our partners to be the best version of themselves? Well, actually, no. That's not what love is about.
Right.
If you slip into this pattern of raising your partner, consider that you maybe saw the same dynamic with your parents, right? Maybe that was modeled for you. Maybe that's what you grew up with in your childhood. And it feels normal. It feels like a healthy dynamic that, two people who love each other, well, they want to help each other out, right? Feels normal. Um, Maybe you got good advice from someone, or no, not shouldn't say good advice. I'll read what it says. Well-intentioned advice. That's key. Well-intentioned advice from friends or family members, you know, um, talking about, well, the person who wrote the article said, remember talking to family members saying, but don't worry, you just need to train him. And, your partner is not a pet, right? Your partner's not, as they say, a Labrador. You married a human. Another reason that you might feel like you're raising your partner is that this is the way that you deal with stress, right? Um, you feel like you can help by molding them, training them, or changing them into what you think so that, you don't have to check your own beliefs and look at the discomfort that that might cause, right? Um, that's another reason that you might be raising your partner, if you will. Or maybe it's just easier and safer to focus on someone else instead of focusing on yourself. There's a part of us that recognizes we haven't processed certain things, and those are hard things that we have to face, right? Those are hard truths that we don't want to face. So it's easier to turn your attention to your partner because it seems like a sound strategy, and you can avoid feeling uncomfortable. After all, we're conditioned to believe that um, being anything less than perfect is unacceptable. So it would be logical that when you grow up to be an adult, you you who should embrace your vulnerabilities. Of course, it makes more sense to avoid them, right? And that's sarcasm, guys. That's sarcasm. So, um, coming out on camera, um, I open the floor to you. Um, that article laid out quite a bit about some of the reasons why we might feel like we are raising our partner. You know, what are your initial thoughts, or how would you like to mention anything that the article has said so far?
Well, I think it's interesting when they're talking about training someone. Because it's always funny because when like on when you're dating or what have you, like the first thing people,
Hmm.
well, once you guys are together, maybe you should talk to him about blah 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 blah. And it's just like,
Right,
wow, like
right.
why would I want him to stop doing that? Like that's a part of who he is. Like why would I want to change that? What would the point in
Hmm.
that be? You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so like it's always interesting to me when someone says, once you're together, or this is, solidified, or once you've like locked it down type of a situation.
Right. Not like, no. In the beginning, it's okay, right? Like, just let it go, let it go.
Like
Yeah,
now you can make them stop doing that. You're just kind of like, well, damn, like doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? Like,
right.
wow.
Well, what cracks me up is I guess that men are the only ones who need trained, right? Like we're the only one. We're the only ones that are incorrigible and have no sense of logic, and we're the ones that need trained, right?
Right?
That's what I'm getting.
And it's funny because like I know for a fact like I need training for sure because I'm like I'm not some like I don't check in. I am like the worst. I am not that
Right.
wife. Like I'm not good morning. How are you doing? How's your day, babe? What like I could go 2, 3 days and then go, oh
Right.
damn.
Right.
Like, oh, like if
Oh, how's my roommate? Right.
exactly if someone says to me, all right, I'll see you on Wednesday and it's
Hmm.
Sunday.
Hmm. Yeah.
I might text on Tuesday, "Hey, we still on for tomorrow?" Like, let's just I don't really want to talk every day because I'm like, then we'll have nothing to talk about on Wednesday. It's kind of how I look at it.
I
But
no, I get that. I get that. Yeah.
but but again, I guess someone was saying, well, you better train her and start calling her, get her to start calling you every day or something like. Well, I
Well, no. But you don't need trained until you're together, right? Like just in the beginning, it's cool.
I
Yeah.
probably
No.
don't have to worry about that because I'm gonna get dumped anyways, so it doesn't matter.
Well, it does raise an interesting point because there was a couple that I worked with, or I should say, they were coworkers. They were married, right? But we all worked together.
Okay.
Now, I may have made mention of them once or twice on some of our shows,
Okay.
but they are an exception, right? Because you're literally spending every waking moment together. I mean,
Yes.
you are married,
I
so
can't
you
even
live
imagine.
together. We all worked the same shift, right? Because it's one thing. There was another married couple who were anchors, right, at this particular station, but they worked opposite shifts, right? The one
Right.
worked like weekends, the one worked early morning. So again, the time they did see each other, they appreciated it, right? This particular couple I'm talking about um, worked the same shift every time. So it drove to work together. Like, I mean, it was, and they seemed fine. They
Okay.
like, but yeah, every
Wow.
waking moment. So
Wow.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. They made it work. They made it work.
Yeah. And
Is it? Yeah, go ahead.
a- and as far as like training someone, I mean, I guess I wouldn't look at it as training
Mhm.
as much as, if you're together and you keep a tidy place and they don't keep a tidy place, then but just it's a conversation of, you know, I see you're not as neat as I am, and so
Wait,
um
how are you trying
this
to be nice?
yeah, like I know, like I don't know how you would say that
Right,
nicely,
right,
but
right.
you know, I mean, I remember honestly, like
Mhm.
it being like my mom and dad were very much Saturdays were for cleaning.
Right.
That's just
Okay.
what we did, where
Mhm.
um like getting to the point where like that's not what I wanted to do on my day off. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's
Absolutely.
just
Because on your day off, you want to do something fun or whatever you choose. Not
yeah,
and you don't
and
choose to clean.
exactly. And then I remember as
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
teenager thinking, how dare you dictate what I'm going to do like all the time? You
Mhm.
know what I mean? But I
Mhm.
didn't have a voice because, it was you do as your parents tell you. So, like,
Mhm.
as I got older in my household, it was we did something for 20 minutes every day, be it the
Mhm.
bathroom one day, clean, the kitchen the other days, like, so we did something a little bit every day during the week. So then when it
Right.
comes Saturday, it was laundry and it was happening throughout the day and it wasn't something that took up our
Like
day.
all weekend or the whole day. Well, and what you're saying speaks to what the article said about the modeling, right? Like what you may
Exactly.
have grown up with, because I know specifically, and I got to tell a story first, but then I'll talk about my parents.
Sure.
And this is clear about modeling. I don't know, 5 or 6, something like that, maybe even younger, maybe 3 or 4, and again, my parents, the traditional roles, right? My dad went out and worked. Before my mom worked, she was either worked part time, but basically stayed home, took care of us, right? So my dad came home and she would make him dinner, right, every night. And I remember he would always say, wife, can you make me a drink, right? Rum and Coke was his drink, by the way, or that's what he started with.
Okay.
But so we get to the part where, like I said, I'm somewhere between 3 and 5 years old, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and I quote, I said, "Wife, can you bring me some milk?" Now, I, I'm not, I'm not
Stop.
even joking. I'm not even joking. I promise. Now, at the time, she didn't get mad, right? Because she was like, "Oh," like the light bulb went off. That's what he hears and sees because his dad wife, "Can you make me a drink?" Right?
Right.
Now, again,
Right.
not like in a demanding way, but just, "Hey, can you," and she made him drink and then done
Yeah,
deal.
yeah,
Who knew, right? Who
right.
knew? So, I mean, she cracked up about it. She actually did bring me the glass of milk, but I think after that, I don't remember her making the drinks as much as.
As she had in the past. Right. Right.
So that's modeling, right?
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
you can say what you want, you can tell them what you want, but they see what you do, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that's kind of what this article was mentioning. If you happen to then start um uh raising your partner, there are several reasons that it could be. Whether it's easier if you're not looking at yourself first, or just I really believe modeling has a lot to do with it. I really do.
Yes. Yes.
And as you
And
were, yo, go ahead, go ahead.
and if you start getting into generation wise, like, dear Lord,
I,
like, you really start thinking, like, no, I mean, seriously, gender
yeah,
wise, like, you
yes.
can't just assume that based on someone's gender, they're gonna be able to do this, that, or whatever, you know?
I,
And so,
I'm
like,
with you,
yeah,
100%.
like, oh,
Well,
you
that's
have
what I was about to share, right?
yeah,
Because
you have
again, you
the
heard me say,
appendix, you could do an oil change, what?
right,
Like,
right. Or, but, my mom and dad, again, my dad worked and my mom eventually worked too, right? But there were some defined
mhm,
roles, right?
exactly,
But
exactly.
my household is almost opposite of that, right?
Mhm,
I cook, well, my wife cooks too, but it's not like I've ever said, "Oh, hey, what are we having for dinner?" Or come home expecting dinner. What part of that might be the up and down of my schedule too, right? But that was one thing that I saw. It was, "Hey, wife, what's for dinner?" And as I got older, like as a teenager, whatever, I'm thinking, bro, you can put some in the microwave." Like, I mean, you, you can make something because,
got 2 hands.
and eventually my mom got to that too. She's like, I ate.
Right, right.
And then he tried to say, "Oh, well, what are you gonna make for Lee?" I was like, "Bruh, I've had a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I'm good. Like,
Yeah,
don't get me in the middle of that." But yeah, like the roles and gender roles from the past were
right.
were clearly defined, and that could be triggering in your marriage now, right?
Correct, correct.
Yeah, some heavy stuff. We'll have our therapy hour for our listeners and viewers, right? We'll have therapy hour next episode. I think we got one more slide before we go to break.
Okay.
Um, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to talk about this one, right? So that's kind of what we were mentioning. If you had any kind of uncertainty or instability or traumatic losses throughout your childhood, it clearly has impacted how you manage your day to day, right? As an adult. And that's the trying to establish safety and stability that manifested in the way you control areas of your life. And so, your partner going on their own path might really trigger some things that you are trying to control, but you're also trying to control their life, right? Because that is like safety for you. That's
Yes, yes.
big deal, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because I know,
So,
like, I
yeah.
have friends who, um, you know, their spouses and or partners are really adamant about boys' nights. Like,
Okay.
yeah, like
Like
they
I have to
gotta
have it. Right. Yeah.
yeah, they gotta do their golfing, they gotta do their bowling,
Mhm.
they've got to have that type, like,
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
there's no getting around it.
It's
The
it's
the
not negotiable. It's like, this is
no,
a set in stone thing on the
exactly.
calendar.
Yeah, we
Well, I'm
can't do
about to
any
deliver our next child. I'm going golfing. No.
exactly. Like, like, "Oh, yeah, we can't do that on Tuesday because yada yada's got this." No, he
Mhm.
does this on Tuesdays, we can't do that. Like, it's you
Well,
don't
and
mess with that night.
and what I'll say to that is, if it works for that couple, right,
Mhm.
then they go with that. It
Right.
but If it doesn't work, then whoever is on the receiving end needs to say something, right? I mean,
But his
right.
father was like that. But I don't know if his grandfather was like that. So, like, that's what's interesting is because is it
Mhm.
just something that all dads had done previous to, so he doesn't know any other way to
Any
do
different, right? Like, wait, this is supposed to happen.
it. Exactly, because I remember,
Yeah.
a couple, at least 2,
Mhm.
where, you know, 2 women were trying to fight it and thought children would change that. You know what I mean? And children
Right,
coming
right.
along did not change it. And
Nope.
so it was just kinda like
Like, yeah, the change is, well, now you're not home alone. You have the kids.
so
Mm.
it's just interesting how, like,
Yeah,
pattern-wise, if it's a pattern that your family did previous, that it's just
very true.
understood that dad's got his guy night and that's all there is to it.
Just
So,
like my dad tried to throw me into having my mom cook. Like, no, bruh,
yeah,
don't.
"No, I'm good, thanks."
Yeah, I have eaten. I suggest you find something too. Well, wait, so see, now I gotta add to the story because this is hilarious, right? I mean, and this got to the point where it would be contentious. So I've seen this. He would want dinner. She's like, I ain't cooking. And so he'd end up eating some like snack food, right? Some
Okay,
cheese and tomatoes, like, but wouldn't make a meal, but make a
okay,
big plate of some snack stuff because he was hungry.
okay.
Like all that effort, you could have just cooked something, right? Like you could have made something. But you taking the time to try to wait to see if who's gonna break first.
Yeah.
Okay, how'd that work for you? But all right, I'm gonna be so haunted now.
You get to visit now.
I'm just telling the truth, y'all. Just telling the truth. But why don't we take a break here because the article does talk about how uh, raising your partner does affect your sex life. So why don't it has some tips too about how where to go if you feel like you're in this kind of relationship. So let's take a break. We'll come back, talk about how it affects the sex life of the people who are raising their partners and what to do if you feel like that. So stay tuned. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, from the break. This is the latest episode of Cruising with the Coaches, conversation with Julie and Lee. Before the break, we were talking about the reasons that someone might feel they are in a relationship and raising their partner, right? And how that works, how that looks. A few interesting stories that I should never tell about my past, but it's cool. It's good because we keep it fresh, we keep it real. But now we want to talk about how that actually can affect the sex life of that marriage, right? So let's go ahead and get into that. So if you noticed in this marriage, in this partnership, that the sex life has dropped off, you guys no longer reach for each other the moment you're in the same room. Interactions have become more parental. That is not a sexy dynamic at all, right? When you are channeling all your energy towards improving your partner, making sure they're progressing, they're changing, they're growing, you run the risk of two important factors. One, they never asked you for help, and two, they survived before they met you. Those are two things you got to think about. So rather than change and grow, they are staying firmly entrenched in their ways, and you end up feeling exhausted, frustrated, and resentful. Worst of all, you feel unappreciated. That also is not a recipe for an active sex life. All right. The other way, or some other ways, it can destroy the sex life in a marriage. If you are the person feeling parented, you might feel like the 5-year old who is constantly getting in trouble, trying to get things right so your partner doesn't get upset. This too can kill any desire for intimacy. And because you started feeling like this when you start to feel like you moved in with a younger version of your parents. Also, not sexy. So, before we get to the tips on if you feel like you're in this kind of relationship, um, any thoughts on what the article had to say about how it affects the sex life of the marriage?
I mean, if you're
Self-explanatory, right?
I mean, if someone's constantly telling you what you're doing wrong, it's not
Could
doesn't lead
also
to
be,
excitement towards the evening. Like, hey,
"Oh, come
you
tell
want
me
to tell
what
me
to do
what else
here
I'm
too,
doing
right?
wrong? I don't know. I don't know how
There's
exciting that would be.
there's so many ways to go with that. That's for sure, right? Maybe that worked for some people, right? No, that's no, that's
Yeah,
that's a different type of show. That's a different type of episode. That
right.
because some people might like wearing diapers and being told what to do. Yeah, no, we're not. No.
But no, I mean, seriously, if you've been told how inadequate all day, like what makes you even think that you would be able
Probably the
by
last thing on your mind, right?
yeah,
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 yeah. And the same the person doing the parenting, right?
right,
You're not actually looking excited to do that either, right?
right,
Like
right,
I'm sure, though, I'm sure in this kind of relationship that the person parenting is probably somewhere like, okay, time to have sex now, right? Like, I mean, they're probably telling them that too, right? I mean, if you're telling them everything else, why not
right.
that? I just a
That would be
thought.
terrible. Ooh,
Absolutely the worst, right? As,
yeah,
as the article said, not
yeah.
sexy, not at
No,
all.
not at all.
But there's hope. There's hope. If you feel like you're in that kind of relationship, and if you've heard everything that we've talked about, here, listen to this. Listen to this. So, the first thing that you want to do is make a decision as to whether you want to really be in that relationship or not, right? So, you might have to really do some digging and explore what drew you to them in the first place, right? Asking that question: do I really love them? What exactly do I love about them? And if you're hyper focused on the things that bother you, it's easy to forget what drew you to them in the first place, right? Maybe you do have the same values. Maybe you do want the same things. Maybe you have the same faith. Remembering those things can actually make you determine whether you want to stay in the relationship or it's time to go, right? but you got to dig deep for those things. The second thing is, as we've talked about in many other shows, focus on yourself. Rather than focusing on your partner's habits, make a conscious effort to turn and look inward, explore your own relationship with expectations and perspectives. Working with a therapist can help you identify and understand stubborn patterns that you might want to change, or it might help you challenge old beliefs about yourself or the relationships that you've either had or saw that didn't serve you or don't even serve you now. Sorry. Anything you want to add before we do the other two tips? Anything
No,
you have
I
to
mean,
say
I
before?
think
Okay.
that's good advice, just to, again, if you value the relationship, like how important is it to, I don't know, if
You,
it's
you,
the
got- you got
fact,
to ask the question.
yeah, yeah, like if it's the fact that the sink is, because I can remember certain
hold,
situations.
hold on. I think there's a moment happening here. Hold
Yes,
on.
this is the moment. But like if your thing is having an empty sink, like you
Right.
just like to
Right.
have an empty sink. And the thing is that that person likes to have a cup of coffee at the end of the night. And if their thing is leaving that cup of coffee and that's the cup and the spoon in the sink, just clean it. Like just clean it. Just go ahead and clean it and put it away. But it's like, is it worth the
Is it
argument
worth?
every
Is it worth the fight? Is it worth the
right?
fight?
Is it worth the fight?
I
I
I,
don't
I
know. Sometimes
distinctly.
like
Sometimes it is. Sometimes
sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Because sometimes it's, I've told you over and over again that this upsets me, and yet you do it over and over again. So it's kind of like,
are you intentionally trying to get at me? And you might finally say, yes, I am.
yes, I am. Well, yes,
and,
I am.
and then you have a laugh and you're like, okay, cool. All right, good. We're done. Right. I distinctly remember that example some episodes ago with the
Uh,
weaponized incompetence. And
exactly, exactly.
I remember that trigger for you. Yeah.
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 Mm, okay. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, moving on, folks. Moving on. Well, this is a big deal too, and I have to say, as a recovering perfectionist, this can be hard to do. But relinquish control, and the person who wrote the article said they'd be lying if they said it was easy, right? But having to control or always control things and to have you feeling safe and secure, maybe that's how you learn to express love, right? But whatever the reason, when you explore other paths that are outside the comfort zone, even if it's terrifying, um, it might seem like too much work. But I can speak from experience, like let go of the control, right? And you probably find that that partner will actually start doing something that you've asked when you stop trying to control it, you know? Yeah. If you've realized that you do love this person and you want to be in the relationship, remind yourself constantly that the only thing that you have agency over is you. No amount of well-intentioned effort on your part will ever change someone, especially if they haven't recognized those changes and they don't want to change. Right? Someone has to change for themselves. So, excuse me. Another tip is be a team, not adversaries. So, if your partner's up for it, ask to go seek couples therapy. Sometimes you can fall into the trap thinking that your partner is a problem or they think you're the problem. But therapists might also be able to see that neither one of you is the problem, but that there is a problem. And so you can work together and figure that out and not having to at it independently. Talking to someone doesn't mean that your relationship will end. It just means that you are trying to work on understanding each other better and trying to resolve conflicts and challenges, right? So, no matter how you show up in relationships, they're not something that you need to be judged from. but they need to be explored, understood, appreciated, because there's value and purpose in all the experiences. Excuse me, as I'm losing my voice, man. The more you understand yourself, the better you can do what might seem impossible, accepting your partner for who they are and not for who you want them to be. So, any not, I don't want to say, well, yeah, any final thoughts, any thoughts on those tips on how to kind of work through if you feel like you're raising your partner?
I think the piece about the therapist, I think
Hmm.
sometimes the fear is, allowing a third party into your situation because, it sometimes can if you go into it looking at it as it's a person who has the ability to look at perspective and to help you understand the other person's perspective
Sure.
rather than it being someone else to jump on your back.
Or-
Because that's how what I mean. Because that's sometimes how people will feel. People like,
Mhm.
oh, this is just now you're both gonna gang up on me type of a thing,
Right.
and
I was
it's
going to
not.
say they're going into it looking, I want the therapist to tell me I'm right and you're wrong.
Exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
usually, I mean,
Yeah.
if you have a good enough therapist, it's a person who's going to look at it from both angles and try to help
Mhm.
you to understand where the other person is coming from. They're not going to say,
Exactly.
Do you hear what she's saying? You sound stupid." Like that's not what they're there. Well, at least that's not what they're supposed to be doing.
I would say they shouldn't.
They
If they
shouldn't be
do,
doing
let's hope they do it for both, right?
exactly, exactly. So I think that's the one piece, like to not be fearful of getting a third person involved. And
Yeah.
it's just as long as it's a professional. A third person should not be a family member or you know what I mean? Don't try to get someone who you trust and who your
You
spouse might not trust
you
kind of.
read my mind. I was gonna say the same thing. Should be a professional. Um, just another public service announcement for those watching and listening. Um, do not have the third person be your side chick or your side man, even even if they're a licensed therapist. Not a good look. Not a good
Oh,
look. Yeah,
I
no,
I
that's
love these reels now where the whoever the partners are together and the one
mhm.
partner calls the other person's dude or their best friend or whatever, and they're like, "Is yada yada with you?" And they're like, "Oh,
Right.
oh yeah, hold on, wait a minute," while they're literally
I've
right sitting next to them. Yeah, hold on, wait a second. Yeah, babe, what's up with it? And I'm like, oh my, and the girls is sitting there like, this is why I don't trust them. See, look,
ex
like
get
this. Yeah,
just
it's
just
so
just
cute.
ratting themselves out, ratting
It's
them.
so cute
Mhm.
though. I'm just like, see, look, you see this? So I love it. I love it. But
Evidence, yeah, don't have that third person try to help because they might be part of the problem. Just
exactly.
again,
But
I'm
no,
just putting it out there, putting it out there.
yeah, yeah. But no, and then I think, you know, um, sometimes I think people are also afraid to go to their pastors or their priests,
Yeah,
to go to their people of faith.
I think that's
And
considered a professional too, though, to be honest, right?
yeah,
I
and I,
would consider that a professional. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's an okay place to go to. And I think
Mhm.
that sometimes people don't think about that,
Yeah.
because sometimes people are afraid to go to therapy per
Right.
se.
But they
So
also might feel that they're gonna be judged by the pastor too, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so I think the same thing fits for, their leadership in their faith. They
yes,
should not be judgmental, just like a therapist should not be,
yes,
right?
yeah, yes,
And by the way, coaches should not be judgmental either.
correct.
I can guarantee you that. I actually had someone ask me, like, "Oh, you get to tell people what to do." Mm-mm. Nope. Absolutely not.
That's not the job. Not the job at
No,
all. Yeah.
no. So,
So
well, folks, we hope you're taken away from this, and if you do feel like you are in a relationship that you're raising your partner or you're being raised by your partner, like both sides, right? But hopefully you've been able to take away from this. And as usual, we appreciate y'all being here with us on another episode. You know where you can find us, right? Right down there, Spotify. Check out Live All Good Podcast. You can look at the CWTC, Cruising with the Coaches, find those episodes. Also, we got a YouTube page right down there. Click, like, subscribe. Every time I say that, I think about my daughter wants me to say it the way, and I'm not going to do that. Not going to do it that way. But we got a YouTube page, y'all. So until next time, Lee and Julie signing off.